if you want me to put it in one word, the word will be it will be complicated, because there's really a lot of complexity in how actually different groups of people ended up in Taiwan. Of course, in the first stage, you have ones that had money, had connections, and has the means to get to Taiwan. At the very bottom, you do have hundreds of thousands of conscripts. These are usually, people from the countryside. They were, peasants, usually very young, for people peasant background, conscripted into the war, or more often than not, towards the end of the war, being held at gunpoint, being really literally kidnapped by nationalist army passing through their region, and sometimes on their way to Taiwan, and basically try to replenish the ranks. Right when they got to Taiwan, they were not only looked down by the mainlander elites, they were also looked down by the local Taiwanese population.
Lots of these old mainlander soldiers never got married or had families in Taiwan. I wonder if you could just explain a little bit about why that is.
In the 1950s, the first decade in exile, the nationalist government or the nationalist military had this law that says that anyone below a certain rank, so it's usually the foot soldiers and below the rank of the officers, which is basically 70% of the military personnel, that you can't get married unless you get a special permission. If they all marry local girls and settle down and have children here, well, none of them will want to go back, right? Risk their life going fighting back to China. So that's the rationale behind the policy. I mean, and in the 1960s, and there were series of reforms that allow, gradually allow people to people in the lower ranks to marry and settle down.
And how does identity play out now in Taiwan? Do mainlanders and their descendants still think of themselves as Chinese?
If you ask another scholar or mainlanders themselves, you get different answers. They're first and foremost Taiwanese, and they're definitely Chinese. But when you ask most of them about their national identity, their national identity is definitely with Taiwan or with the Republic of China. And the history that the version of Chinese history that they identify with is the version of history promoted by the Republic of China on Taiwan, not the version of Chinese history or the version of revolutionary Chinese history, promoted by the PRC or the Chinese Communist Party in Beijing. There's a huge difference.